Okay.
Yeah.
Another Monday night. We'll call it change over, make it. Who we missing on? Amy?
Yes.
And Kirk? And the only other one that is Rock Century. Yeah. So.
Ginger, so Amy's not home.
You not? Yeah. You never know. So there's no need for.
Not long term.
And then well, we could see Carl for Amy. And if she shows up, then you get kicked off. That sounds good.
That sounds good.
All right.
I'll deal with that.
Uh,
I move to see Carl for Amy.
Second. Oh, doesn't matter. We both know. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Clerk, I was joining us. Public comment.
I wasn't sure, the other one wasn't.
What that's one is recorded, yes. The other one was in person, this one is was in.
It was recorded though.
It was recorded, but not.
So you know that, you're hungry.
Mhm.
About it, what's it? The bell.
All right, discussion. We're gonna turn it over to the selectmen.
Just would like to say, it's good to have the other two selectmen next to me here. I want you all to know that when we put this proposed spending plan together, it's never in a vacuum. So it's work of the Board of Selectmen as a whole. As I've said many times before, in our small town of Canaan, our town's proposed municipal spending plan is not just a document. It's a reflection of our community's shared values and priorities. It is a tool that allows us to provide essential services, invest in our future, and ensure our community continues to thrive. The Board of Selectmen advocates for a proposed spending plan that supports our needs. We are not just requesting the funds to support our town, but those that support the very fabric of this town. The Board of Selectmen have returned at your request after a second look at our initial proposed spending plan, and we will review it for you. And I would leave it to you as the chair. You want us just to hit the highlights where we, or do you want a line by line?
Okay, with the highlights, so everybody
Agree.
agreement?
Yep. Sure. If we go to 1001, selectmen's expenses, administrative assistant to the Board of Selectmen, we cut that back to his previous approved budget number of $750, which was in 2024. 24-25, I should say.
So you cut the 950 increase, is that what you
We
did?
cut the 950 increase check. If we go over to legal expenses, litigation was approved we had asked for more money there. We asked for it to be increased. And we actually decreased it. Let me just cross reference. We had wanted to go up this year to $4,500. We just decreased it back to the line which was approved in 24-25 and the 24-25 amended budget of $1. And hope that we won't enter any litigation. So that would be down $4,499. The Board of Finance, we asked that maybe you share a little bit of the pain with the Board of Selectmen when it comes to the secretary. And we decreased that by $760 down to a proposed $1,440. If we go to page 5. Line 1023, fund for non-municipal public benefit activities. We had asked increase of $1,500 to the Falls Village Canaan Historical Society. We cut that in half to $750. So minus $750. The DM Hunt Library. Those increases only $1,000. We had actually asked for $2,275 to be added. It is now proposing it's $1,000. So bringing you up to 65,725. The go to the 2001 Fire Commission. Hydrants and water. We were able to decrease that
What is that one, please?
by 2001, on page 7.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Excuse me. Our proposed had been to stick with last year, $9,500, but we have dropped it to $4,000. The reason being is that we have worked with Aquarian, which we'll be talking about at our meeting on the 12th. And we were able to bring that down.
Here's the question, what does that entail though? Hydrants and water?
Hydrants,
Firehouse.
firehouse,
Okay.
and that would be for drinking there and so on and so forth.
So Dave, you brought, the proposal was 9,000 and you're bringing it down to 4,000?
Yes.
Okay.
And am I missing anything?
Yeah.
Like that.
Double checking. Thanks. Anything else? Chris, I missed something, I'm sorry for the minutes, the litigation, it says on here 2,500, I wrote down 4,500. The proposed expenditures,
That's what,
Back to the dollar.
Went back to $1.
and then it went back to $1.
so proposed for expenditures for
2,500.
is 2,500, so it went down 2,000?
Yes,
I thought it was 4,500.
there was originally 45. It went down. Well,
Or 25,
We proposed, yeah, we proposed 2,500 and that would be a decrease.
or 2, right?
Oh,
Nice.
well, actually,
okay.
yeah, actually, it was
So
originally 2023-24, it's 45. And then it was down to $1. No, don't so.
So what, this all adds up to 10,000 and change?
Yes.
Something like that?
Steve has a question.
Oh, Steve, I'm sorry.
sorry, so we did not touch the heavy equipment or the truck reserves.
We did not.
No,
Explain.
Well, I think that simply put is that after having our DPW manager in here and looking at the prices of equipment, we need to put a great deal of money, and I don't need to tell some of the people here who deal in heavy equipment that we're looking at backhoes and trucks and so on. As a matter of fact, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris or Judy, but the one thing we're looking at is we have a backhoe that's over 25 years old that we would be looking to replace. And we just don't have the funds there. So taking taking into consideration what we have been told by our DPW manager, I think we are best at increasing that and trying to make up for that.
Do you have any idea when you think you're gonna be purchasing something?
I do not know, okay? The hope is, Steve, that we're not purchasing next week,
Yeah,
okay?
but.
Quite frankly, I just took my car to be serviced and they called me and say, hey, we got $1,200 worth of work to do here. So that things are around the corner.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve, I'm just looking at the document that was supplied here, the budget you have in the fire commission. I'd like to see it corrected for the amended budget for last year. Because it does not line up with what the final budget was that was approved. The numbers are, while the total is there, the line items are off.
Okay.
On under the approved budget. And it looks like we made some sort of amendment between, for example, in physical exams, looks like we made an amendment. Which
You did.
is not showing in last year. Where was it? Hold on here. 35, where was it? We did a $500 one. Where are you? The physical exams. So it was approved at 3,500. We did just a $500 amended budget. I know, it just doesn't.
Okay.
And
I will-
because it goes along with the hydrants and water, because I didn't see, I don't remember a $500 swing with that.
I will
Check those out.
I will check those out.
Thank you. So what do we have for a net?
I got 10,685. Is that what you got? 10,680.
Just under 11,000.
Thoughts, comments?
10,686. You want me to pass this thing around?
Sure.
Um. This is something that Denise prepared on her own and asked me to look at, which I did, and made some slight changes. And before you struggle with the numbers, basically what we're trying to do is take the various projections, both for revenue and expenses through the rest of this year. And get more comfortable in where we think the general fund is going to be at the end of this fiscal year. Now, I sent this to Ginger yesterday, I think, and today Michelle said that she's going to need another $30,000. I don't know what it's for, but another $30,000 out of the general fund. So if you stay in the top half of the page, it all relates to the current fiscal year, 24-25. Looking at the projected revenue, and these are off the reports Michelle has given us, and projected expenses, we thought we were coming up 33,000 short, which would have meant we only had to use 33,000 of the 150,000 allocation. Today, as I said, do you know what the explanation for the $30,000 increase is?
Well, I have her using 63,000, so you must have had a different. Do we have 80? Is that what we had before? I don't have an answer for.
Okay, all right, so we don't know,
No.
and maybe we can find that out, but if you follow down the numbers, we started the year with 1.208. We have appropriated a total of 70,000 for three things, the 55 for the engineering study, fire department physicals, and its micro grant is attributable to the fact that we've got 10 in revenue. Wait a minute, additional 5K does not appear in expenses, but 10K is in revenue. So we're not sure about that, but it looks like we're gonna need $5,000 more than the projections were saying. So that gets you down to the shortfall that we thought existed, 33,713. And then we learned today, another 30,000 is gonna be needed. So our shortfall is gonna be 63,000 instead of 33,000. So you do the arithmetic and you start with a 1.208 and you get total adjustments of 133,000, which is just the sum of the numbers you see above it. And it gives us a balance of 1,074,000. If we get the steep grant, and I take it we still haven't heard anything.
No.
As of today, we have not.
Okay, so if we get the steep grant, our general fund, best as we can figure it out, is gonna be $950,000. So let's put off in a minute how much of that board is comfortable using to meet the budget. But where we are, if you look over below the gray line, you see revenue projections, and you see posed expenses, and the far left set of numbers was based on the proposed budgets. The middle set of numbers is if we got the budget, the spending reductions we asked for, and the far right numbers are if we got 10 from BOE and 10 from Board of Selectmen. So if we collect, and there may be a reason to think we won't collect, but if we collect at the 99.3% that Michelle was budgeting on this year, it's going to leave a total shortfall for the coming year of the number you see in red at the bottom of the far right column, 471,000. If we were to cut into, and that's about 1.9 mils, that's what it would take to cover that, 1.9. If we were to take the general fund down to the 12.5% limit that we've set, so you're starting at 950, and if you do the arithmetic, you can take a little less than 150 out, so just call it 150. That is 5/8 of a mil. So the 150 we could take out of the general fund is 5/8 of 1 mil. So the 1.9 mil increase that we would need if we didn't use the general fund is reduced by 5/8 of a mil and gets us down to a point where we've got to increase taxes to cover the deficiency to the tune of 1.3 mils. So we'd be looking at a 1 mil increase last year and another 1.3 this year, 2.6 mil in 2 years on a base of 21 mils when we started the process. So that's 11-12% tax increase over the course of 2 fiscal years, which I don't need to tell you is steep. So here's my thoughts, and then we can just go around the table and see what people think. We've got a serious issue here that we're outspending our revenue by a lot of money. $471,000. If we collect at the 99.3% rate. So how do we make that up? We could dig into the general fund as deeply as the 12.5% figure that we thought was prudent would allow. So that's a big chunk. That's $150,000. If we raised taxes by 1.3 mils, that's going to cover all the rest of it, which would be about $320,000 of increased taxes. Now, my sense is that, and you're probably going to disagree with this, is that we made a modest request, $50,000 on a budget of $2.7 million. So I think that was about a 7%, something like that, increase in an environment where inflation is about 3%. So we're spending we're doubling the pace of inflation with our spending increases. And it seems, I've only been on the board 2 years, but I hear what people have said before that every year we have some money left over. So we're over budgeting. We're budgeting more than we need. So my sense is we're just digging into taxpayers too much here, because it's their money in the general fund that we will take 150 of. It's more taxes out of their pocket this coming year for another 320. I just think it's an unbalanced approach to our deficit. So there's no need to go through the budget line by line unless people think that we should be asking the municipal budget to give us more than the $10,700 that they have cut. I personally think they should, so I'm in favor of trying to find the $50,000 of cuts that we asked them to give us. But I don't want to go through that exercise if I'm the only one thinking that way.
Can I ask where you got the top line projected revenue number from?
Where's on?
Yep, that's one right there, top one.
That is from Michelle's, the most recent revenue report. After you backed out, I don't have that with me, but that's
I have it
where
right here.
when she had somewhere on that report. Let's see. So the April 28th report. So they have that handy.
I have one from today, so.
Oh, that's from
that
today.
it?
So
Is that-
we didn't have that.
I think it is, yes.
No, there was no very someplace. But that's where.
Right here, Tom. This number right here, estimated 24-25.
Where does this come from, this sheet of paper? It's
It's the same thing.
It's the same.
Without
not the same thing if it's not right there.
That's a more current report.
Right, but all I'm saying is there's a large discrepancy between that number and that number.
Tom,
This-
this right here is not revenue. That is general fund
Right,
appropriate.
so we've appropriated 162,000
No.
or 166,000. We've only used 62,000 of that.
We haven't used any. That's not revenue.
Yeah, but this is money we took from the general fund, correct?
Yeah.
That we would take from the general fund for last year.
But it's not revenue.
Okay, fair. So you're still not showing me where 5.9 million comes from.
Take this number. Look for a second page. Take this number and subtract this. It's not revenue.
Okay.
That's how you get them up. with that.
Okay. But is there, so tell me if I'm wrong, but the appropriation from general fund of $166,000
That's what we would need in order to
cover,
as of the 4/30.
right, and of that, we've only used 62,000,
If we base it on the rest of the projections.
right? So
she's
potentially,
Expecting that we will
But
spend
that-
only 62 of
right,
that.
so, okay, so
That's all baked in those numbers right
there's
there.
100,000 between those two things baked in here.
Right here. If you start with this number, which is a revenue, and you go down. We've taken the 33,000 shortfall that we thought existed,
Okay,
added another 30 to it, so I'm not sure which number you think is wrong.
no, I understand what Denisha said, where if you take this number here
Yeah,
and you subtract that number there, you get this number. I can do the math, but I'm assuming
Yeah.
that's correct.
okay,
I'm concerned about the difference between these two numbers and where that's baked
I
in.
didn't even see this until right now. These two numbers?
I know it's an estimate, I know there's still 2 months to go, but I'm wondering if, instead of all these heavy cuts and thinking about that stuff, is there other money that we're not thinking about that we're not gonna need from the general fund that's been appropriated, but yet still available?
Well, if her projections are changing by the month, we may have more, we
They're
may
gonna
have
think
less.
that's now going to the end of the year, so.
They could change in either direction, but let's see. So I don't know what those were on the April 28th report.
Can I just say one thing? Sure. You go back to the Board of Ed. There's an increase, regional budget, 126,000. Over V8 Kellogg is an increase of 146. There's a mill right there. Yeah, increase. Yeah, so it's. I'm not sure if it's fair to ask. To cut $50,000.
Right.
I mean, if you figure that out, 3.9 million is what, 16
Well, the reason
mil?
that we came up with that roughly 5-to-1 request for every $1 BOE takes, the town takes 5, is because most of the BOE expenditures were locked up by contract. They couldn't cut it.
Yes, what I'm saying is maybe we can't find it someplace.
Can't find
We
one.
can't find a cut. $50,000.
Well, maybe we can't, and if people don't want to, all I want to do is before we start the exercise, I think we can. I think there's $50,000 of money to take out of the municipal budget without affecting the quality of life in this town.
Okay.
And again, we over budget every year. And we allocated 150 from the general fund, and it looks like right now we're only going to use 60 of it. So $90,000. Now, I don't know where that April 28th here is right here. So. Let's see.
So see, there's that number there, which is there, right? Those two numbers match up right there.
Yep. Oh, this one, yeah,
I remember someone made the note last week, I think it was Ginger, that said that number was missing. So it added.
But the point being is that it shouldn't be down below in the state and local
Right.
revenues. I really have to ask Michelle to move that number of appropriation to the bottom.
Sure, that makes sense.
Because that's what we're figuring it into
Sure,
it, and I
sure.
think it needs to be at the.
My only point was, that I was just making clear, I'm not gonna argue over math and I'm not gonna argue over where it belongs in the sheet. That's not my specialty. But when I see a difference of $100,000, I start to think about, well, if we don't need all of that, is that money that goes back to the general fund or stays in the general fund? It allows us to reduce the mill rate increase. That's all I'm concerned about, is that I think anything more than one mill rate to the town, the taxpayers is ludicrous. I'd like to be closer to 0 if possible. I know that's very tough to do. But if we cut services and increase or increase taxes, the townspeople are all gonna be affected. So
yeah. So I think these numbers, to the best of our ability, and this, I think, is the confusion here, is just that the general fund appropriation was treated as revenue and it's not, and that she's trying to correct for that, and maybe we need to get another report. But these things reflect, I think, notwithstanding that, these things reflect where we're going to end up at about $950,000, unless Michelle comes back to us in the remaining 6-7 weeks of the fiscal year and says our projections on revenue and expenses are going to change. I don't know if she will or she won't. So right now, this is where we're sitting. And these numbers here on the bottom are just, that's the revenue she's projecting for 26 and the expenses that the two bodies have asked us. So there's not a lot of conjecture in that, and it's leaving us with this whopping hole. $471,000, if I've got the right one here. Yeah, $471,000. Yeah, and the question is how to fill it. And basically what we're hearing is, and we haven't heard from Pat, but I'm assuming Pat is gonna say, okay, I'm gonna take them, I'm gonna reduce my budget by $10,000. But again, we're in an environment where inflation is about 3% and the increase is about 7%, and all we got back from the town was $10,685. I think it's out of balance. You may disagree with me, but I think we need to cut our expenditures a little more so that we can, you talk about a 1 mil rate. So if we stay right here and we don't ask the town to make any more cuts, it's gonna be 1.3 mil rate increase. And if we took $50,000 out of that, instead of 10, so we take 40,000, that's about 0.15 mil. So you're still gonna be over a mil.
But there's potential for additional funds that are not out, that are not, they're sitting out here, that 100,000. The steep grant, if we don't get it, 125,000. It just might be premature to talk about a higher mill rate until some other information comes across.
Well, it's not gonna come from here because she's just correcting an error there. The steep grant is different. If we don't get the steep grant, yeah, we've got another $125,000. But I don't see any magic that's gonna make, it's gonna put more money and more revenue in our hands because Michelle corrects that report. I just don't see how that's possible. And we don't have the luxury of time. I mean, we can put this off for a month, and know exactly what the picture is gonna be at the end of the fiscal year, and we could send the tax bills out a month later. We could do that. We could do that. And I wouldn't be opposed to doing that, but the tax bills are gonna go out later.
I just want to make one more comment, and I'm gonna probably be a little off base, but that's who I am. So, last year we did this exercise and we were very much, the sky is falling. We need to make sure we take care of things, and we increased the mill rate. And then we found out later in the year that we didn't have to cut as deeply. We had a surplus. I'm just wondering if we could be a little more cautious this year without jumping to conclusions and potentially not raise the mill rate that high.
Well, you remember why we were off 300,000? It was not because of any decision anybody around this table made. Our treasurer did not give us an accurate read on what the general fund was.
I disagree. I
You
disagree.
disagree. There was
Because we had numbers at this table that weren't from her, that we were using to base a lot of our decisions.
It is the treasurer's job to project what the revenue was.
And if you don't want to
And
use
the
your numbers,
expenses.
that's not my problem. Okay, last year we had a lot of papers. Hold on, let me finish. Last year we had a lot of papers floating around the table that were not generated by this town.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Come on.
Don't talk.
Our
about that.
secretary,
Just stop.
our secretary gave out her own sheets of paper for us to use.
Well, she
And I even
didn't.
questioned it at that meeting.
Yeah, but don't come at this like accuse us of that. I'm not took these papers that didn't come from the town. Nobody was doing anything. We had numbers that weren't accurate right from the get-go. We tried to work through this. The numbers that we were given that we worked off of did come from the treasurer. What Denise gives us or what anybody else produces from this table aren't the documents that we worked from. We work from what the treasurer gives us. That's what we work
And this
from.
is based on what the.
Doesn't matter how many pieces of
My
paper are
memory is
floating
slightly
around.
different than that, but we'll let that,
That's fine.
okay,
Since
all
I'm
I'm saying,
secretary, may I just say one thing?
you may,
On June 1st, when you set the mill rate, the projection from the treasurer was 900,000 in the general fund. You found out in October it was 1.2. That 900,000 did not come from the secretary or anyone else. It was on the projected general fund
Right.
report. Every number on this sheet is from the treasurer.
Right.
Every single number.
Right.
The only thing that is not from the treasurer is the calculation at the bottom as to what the mill rate is. These are the treasurer's expenses, the treasurer's revenue, the treasurer's allocations, and the treasurer's municipal and education budget. There's not one thing on here that is not from the treasurer, the selectmen, or the board of ed.
all right, well, I'll stand corrected, but we did fall into an exercise where we cut too deeply last year, and I want to make sure that we don't do that again.
Well, so do I. I don't wanna, I wish we hadn't increased taxes last year because we didn't need to. But we can only go on the basis of the information that the treasurer gives us. And right now, this is the best of what she's given us. So if people are gun shy about what might happen in the next 6 weeks, we can postpone for a month.
Well, I think what your idea of going through this line item by line item is not a bad idea, but I don't think it's something that can be done tonight, because I'd rather take the time to really read it and digest it, because we did go back and ask for $50,000 and we asked for 10, we didn't get that, so we're in a different position than we were last time. So
Yeah.
now I want to be able to take this and go through it line by line and say, what is this about? Where can we cut this? How can we cut this? I think that would be the fair thing to do. We have a meeting coming up next Monday, where Monday seems to be coming the time that we have all our meetings. And then get back to it, but I have no problem delaying stuff to get these numbers right. We have not been comfortable at all about the numbers, and I questioned that last time. Are we comfortable with the numbers? I did ask that question.
Right.
I'm not accusing anybody of anything, so anybody wants to take that, say I've accused somebody, I haven't. But we haven't been comfortable with the numbers. I need to know, we need to have Michelle here to be able to ask her about the numbers. She's not here. We can't, we can't make a call on these numbers unless we have somebody that can answer the questions. And she's not here to answer the questions. And at this time of year, we need to have that. That's the bottom line. This is a very important process, and it affects more than the people at this table. It affects more than the library. It affects more than the fire department. It affects 1,000 people in this town.
Mhm.
And that is our responsibility. And I think we need to take the time to digest this, dissect it, and all come back. John may have a thought, you may have a thought, we all may have thoughts about this, but we need to be able to really look at this. And if people get mad, they get mad. People get upset, they get upset. But the bottom line is, if you can't afford something, you can't afford something. And we can't keep kicking this can down the road. And that's what we're doing. And we're putting the town in a very bad spot. We can argue over the general fund. We can argue about how much we take or don't take, the mill rates or whatever. But the bottom line, we're gonna have the same problem next year if we don't stop, bleed.
You're not gonna be able to stop the increasing expenses. You're not gonna stop. It's gonna happen. I talked about this last week. We don't have enough revenue, and that's the problem. And I know that the major source of revenue comes from tax increase. I get that, but that can't be the only way.
But I think we need to be able to, as individuals, be able to look at this and come up with ideas and say, hey, what about this? Why aren't we doing this? And I think that's the way to go about this. This is what our responsibility is. And I've said this from the get-go. We have a responsibility to the taxpayers, not just the people around this table.
What
All
time
right.
is it right now? 6:45.
Right.
Do you wanna, we're here, do you wanna use some of the time?
I would like to take the time to be able to, on my own, to go through this line by
Alright.
line and to make some notes to myself. And I think
Okay.
it would behoove everybody to do that. Set up a special meeting maybe if we have to keep going on this. We can't go through what we went through last year, because at the end of the day, we were really operating and we were at, the 11th hour. We're trying to pull everything together and we screwed up, regardless of whose fault it was, the treasurers, this table, whatever. We didn't come up with the right final decision. And I think that it behooves us to take the time to do it right. And if we have to wait a month for the bills to go out, the town's not gonna go belly up. But there's a good chance the town could go belly up if we don't stop and look at what we're spending.
Right.
And I'm not talking about this year, I'm talking about down the road. We can't keep keeping this, kicking this can down the road because we keep doing it.
Tom's got a good point. The expenses are not gonna stop. And this is, we're here, and I think, all of us around the table, what's the plan? We're gonna get to a point where this town may have to make some serious cuts, whether it's education.
Exactly.
something else That we don't wanna talk about.
And we say,
But,
here, this is what
There
you
may be
got.
mergers down the road that we don't wanna talk about.
Exactly, but we've got to address that and know what's coming
I
down.
don't know where it's coming from.
It's not that far down the road.
It is not that
No.
far down.
That's the point I was trying to make about Kellogg.
Yeah,
There's a
may
lot of
get to
things.
the point.
that an
But not
exploration
sustainable.
of something else is gonna be on the radar. Not that
We
I wanna
have-
say that, but
We have to look at it without emotion. We have to look at the numbers. Numbers have no emotion. People around the table making the decisions and the taxpayers do. But we have to look at the facts, and the numbers are, they're not lying to us. They are what they are. And if we don't look at each line and say, maybe we can't do it this way this year. Maybe we have to put something off this year and wait till next year. But we can't keep kicking this can down the road and hope to God that all of a sudden the sky is gonna open up and money's just gonna fall into Falls Village, because it ain't gonna happen.
So John, since you have been looking at the expenses in a different way, perhaps, do you have recommendations or thoughts on some bigger items that you think are worth discussing?
Yeah, and that's what I had in mind when I said we've got a little time. Why don't we use it so that saves time at the next meeting. So I didn't know, I didn't know what cuts the selectmen were gonna come back with, so I just worked off a clean slate. And these are my judgments. I would have eliminated the entire litigation expense, which was $4,500, and I would have reduced the other litigation line.
Is that the lawyer's fees for 6 or what?
I think it was 6. I would have reduced that to 1 and eliminated the litigation expense altogether, recognizing.
No, they have it down to 5, so it's.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm starting from scratch, so I'm just want to
Okay,
respond to
okay.
Tom.
All right.
So I thought there was 11,500, which would leave the selectmen with $1,000 in their expense line. I don't really think the Planning and Zoning Commission needs to have an expense line for legal expenses. They got always come to us if they get in a jam, but there's 11,500. Yeah, and Amy had a concern about this when we met last week, the increase in the planning and zoning budget for the various things that they ask their consultant to do. I thought there was room for 5,000 there.
Steiner, Chuck?
Yep.
Did we ever determine what the $5,000 increase was for the planning?
The increase basically was because they know that they have a number of issues coming up along River Road and some other housing in the area. And it has,
Okay, so the merging of the two lines for ZEO
yeah,
also
Yeah.
made a $5,000 increase on top of that?
yes.
Right.
So they looked at additional hours
Right.
that they would be using.
There's some revisions.
Yes, and yes.
So the merged lines, it still increased it by 5,000, right?
Yep. This is a big ticket item. I understand it's a big ticket item and it's one that probably will arouse some emotions. But in reserves. Back at the end of the 24 fiscal year. Kellogg had a $31,000 surplus. They were told by the auditors that they can't create a reserve of their own,
That they cannot or they can?
could not at
Okay.
that time. But the town could do it for them. And the town contributed 25,500 last year to the Kellogg reserves, the two of them, one's technology and one's building. And the proposal is to do it again this year. And I have a very basic thought. If there was $31,000, and I wouldn't say this every year, but we're in a serious. If they had 31,000 extra, and it's now set away in an account, then I think this year, the town doesn't need to add
What's
it.
that 31,000?
It was the surplus they had left over from the 24 fiscal year. And when we had the auditors meeting, the auditor said, you cannot keep the reserve, but the town can do it for you. So I don't know. I've been told there's
So the
$31,000.
31,000 is the school budget, not a reserve.
It's the Kellogg operating budget. It's different from the town's contribution to the reserve. It's just extra, it's money they budgeted but didn't
And
spend.
spend, okay.
Right, and so that's, I'm told, in an account someplace. So that's money that they didn't count on having, they budgeted, they thought they'd spend it. It's there now, so I don't see the argument for making the $25,500 contribution to the fund if they've got $31,000 left over in an account somewhere from 24. I also, and I've got two things that I've indicated here on my notes, but I don't know enough about them, and I wanted to talk about them. One was the reserve for the planning and zoning rewrite. It's $2,500. I don't know what that is.
That's the town plan. Oh, no, that's the regulation,
Regularly.
the regulation.
So it seems like we've been rewriting these regulations for a long, long
When
time.
was the last time they were rewritten?
I think that one needs to be explored.
Thought that was a PLC. Yeah.
Well, it says rewrite. It's a reserve for the POC.
Town plan, right, regulations and the town plan, which is a P O C D.
Well, yeah, so it's,
So that's for the POCD?
and the rights, it's a foundation.
So what's the status of this regulation rewrite project? How long has it been going on?
Development town plan is very-
I just mean the regulations, not the POCD, the zoning regulations. It's part of this money.
I don't think you have to rewrite them, they have to change.
Plan of conservation. Right.
So are you suggesting that after every 10 years when they do the P O C D, out of that comes a rewrite?
Right, not complete, but I mean, they
10 year.
number of regulations. The regulations are derived from the plan of conservation and development. You can't change a regulation just on whim. It has to be consistent with the plan of conservation and development. So if that's updated every 10 years, theoretically, then so should the regulations.
If they've changed, but if they haven't really changed and they still,
Well, that's where they're working on the
Yeah.
downtown rewrite.
Right.
Who does the rewrite? Is the commission, or is it legal, or is it found out?
Janelle.
So now we'll be doing it.
And is this to accommodate a village district in the downtown? Is it that change in the POCD that's
No.
requiring a rewrite of the regs? I'd just like to have some more detail on this. I know, Chris, that if you change the POCD every 10 years, there may be some spillover effect to the regulations, but not necessarily.
Right.
She's doing.
I drafted our regulations about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe more, myself. There was no Janelle.
Right.
And we have commissioners on the board. They volunteer to do it. They can roll up their sleeves and do some of this themselves. It's like we're doing.
they
this
always have,
ourselves.
and they always have, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
I served on planning and zoning, and it's the same thing.
yeah, so I have a question about that. And the other thing I had a question on was in the public.
Public work.
So, general public safety. I've heard this said, I don't have a view on the facts, it's simply the
It's
case. But I would like to know about it. I've been told that the emergency manager coordinator,
Oh, I see, yeah.
pre-COVID was making about 5,000. It was increased for obvious reasons during COVID, and it's never come down. So is there justification for maintaining the increase? And how much work is done to justify the increase?
Well, it depends on if there's an emergency.
Correct. Every town, John, needs to have an emergency management director. And I would point out to you that certainly ours is underpaid in comparison to some other towns. Okay, but what we had established back then was, and I'm not gonna call it a bonus because it wasn't a bonus. But back then, when we put in that $2,000 was a pro pay, if you will. Okay, regarding that particular situation we had with COVID.
Right.
Okay,
So the total, from what I understand,
that has not been given again.
right, but the total from what I understand between the emergency coordinator line plus this extra contingency reserve or whatever it was called. My understanding is, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong, is that it used to be in some $5,000. And now the line is
No, I'm talking about the-
$9,600.
Correct.
So there's a net increase over and above the regular salary
Correct.
and the reserve, and I'm asking the question. Is that $5,000 bump, which may have been required during COVID, is it really necessary now?
There was a copay of $2,000 given for that particular bump.
I'm not sure what you mean by propay.
Okay, John, basically that we had a situation that we in fact gave a kick in pay. Okay, and I'll use the word propay because that's what we use with the state police, calling it propay.
Okay.
Okay, or emergency pay, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, whatever you want to term it. Okay, was for that particular situation during COVID. Okay, but the pay did go up with the emergency management.
Right.
So what did the propay go from 5,000 to up $2,000 and then?
No, that was just a one-time propay. If you look down here, we called it a contingency performance,
Right, okay, which is the
Yeah.
dollar line, yeah, that you have, now.
Right.
Okay.
which we eliminated.
Right.
But the emergency manager coordinator originally was $5,000. That's what I'm trying to understand.
I'm gonna have to go back and look, Carol.
That's what I'm trying to,
I remember, but I think that, again, what is done there and that particular pay is not.
but you move the contingency, basically you move the contingency to the emergency manager coordinate position and eliminated that contingency, right? That's what I'm trying to understand.
No, we would still put in the contingency line. We kept that line, that contingency line, just in case we have a pandemic or something where we would want to do that pro pay.
And it's probably,
And hopefully,
it's
we
probably,
won't have a
well,
pandemic.
it's also broader than that. That's
Well,
thinking,
of course.
you know, you have a major power outage like we did several Octobers ago where people need, like, it's warm.
Right.
Someone's gonna coordinate all that stuff. So it's not just COVID, it's other things as well. But
Correct.
Okay, well. If people think that $9,600 is what we should be paying and it's fair for the services rendered, I have no idea how the volume of services being rendered.
Well, as you know, everything has to go online now with Demus, okay? We're putting those together. So again, there's still quite a bit of work.
Okay, so anyhow, come back to you, Tom. If you add all those things up, they came to 47,500. I'm not saying that on being educated about what the emergency coordinator does, that I wouldn't want to cut that, but if you put all those on the block, it comes to 47,500. If you take out, what I had considered might be a reduction for the emergency coordinator, and you put in some of the cuts that the selectmen themselves.
overlap there with litigation.
Yeah, but the sum of those two might come very close to $50,000. And what that would mean for us, if these numbers prove to be right, is that this 1.3 mil increase that the taxpayers would have to bear come down to like 1.1, something like that. $50,000 would save 0.2 of a mil.
Is that including the 10,000 we're asking from the Board of Education or no?
Well, I was gonna
Is that
return to
just
the
50?
education.
No, that's assuming that the Board of Education
Okay, all
does give us the 10.
So can I return to that 30,000 you mentioned before?
Is 30,000?
No, the 30,000 for the board of education?
Oh, yeah.
Now, are you suggesting that they reduce their budget in accordance to that and
No, I'm just.
you're saying moving that, can we move that money from sort of their reserve to our reserve? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, we just don't add to the reserve. We don't need to because they're holding.
Just the town wouldn't add to the reserve.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because they have 30,000 sitting there that they can use for the emergency or whatever. We won't need to go into the
Sure.
reserve.
So if you took this 3,500 out.
That one I understand.
Board of education would make.
This would be $44,000. And if you took, well, this is already in, if you took some of these, I mean, the hydrants, I don't know anything about the hydrants. That's $5,000 right there.
Was that for all the hydrants all around town?
Well,
Or-
there's gonna be a reduction in cost there because of, they were overbilling us.
Right.
So that's a natural.
Yeah, but that's for all the different hydrants at the different ponds and everything else is, right? That's
No,
it.
not the ponds, just the hydrants.
Oh,
Aquarium
okay.
hydrants, which used to be one owned by our water company.
So if you took out the litigation expense, because it does overlap, this 10,685 would be 8,685. Plus 44, you're actually over $50,000. So in my view, there is $50,000 we can find. I want to find, but we're looking at, we're in a hard situation. So we weren't. The only mistake we made last year is we didn't know we had $300,000. And so we raised the mill rate, but even if we hadn't done that, I mean, just look at it, we've got a deficit. Right now, just on the first column, it's $491,000. And we're gonna have a general fund, if we dig into it this year, of only $800,000. That thing's gone in 2 years unless we make up our
Right.
spending deficit exclusively through taxes.
Back to the 31,000 on the Board of Ed. Where did the 31,000 come from?
Here's my understanding that at the end of the 24 fiscal year, they had $31,000 of money they had budgeted but had not spent.
Okay, so if it goes into their budget,
It's under 30.
29 inch.
20
Percentage that they said they could keep, right? That the government said they could keep. But
So
they-
$30,000 and they were told by the auditors that they were not permitted by law to create their own reserve. And the town could, so we had been, I think we had been, but in any event.
They had to give us back that money and
Well,
yes,
I think it's gotta go back towards, since it was already budgeted for education, I think it's gotta go back towards something to do with
It's
education.
gotta be on, it's
No.
gotta be on our P and L, our town P and L. They do not have a P and L. Board of Ed does not maintain a profit and loss. The, balance sheet, excuse me, balance sheet. It has to be in our balance sheet for the town. It is not, and it has to be a reserve, but they have control over the funds and how they're spent. They don't have to come to us on how.
no, that's from, they were allowed to keep like 2% or 2.5% of their unspent
Yes.
budget.
And
So that comes to $31,000. So they can keep that. Okay, and they can use it for
It's
whatever.
still in the general fund, Carol. It's still in our,
Well-
it's still in the town.
Right, but we don't have to add to our reserve. We don't have to keep the reserve.
That's the
Yeah.
larger point. That
Yeah.
it's somewhere in the system. I don't know
Right.
exactly where it is.
Yeah, but
But
it's,
we don't have to
we don't have to
duplicate it.
duplicate it. Exactly. That's what he's
So
saying.
in addition to the reserve
Right.
again in the coming fiscal year. Um,
And where's that line? The line where we allocate towards the
That it's under,
education.
it's in our
General.
reserve.
in the reserve accounts.
you know,
Okay,
and
it's,
it's,
now I get this. I understand this now.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to before.
Non-recurring capital account.
Yeah. Six
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
seven,
Page 6
and seven.
and.
It rolls over to seven.
Yeah, it rolls over to 7, so it's 8,500.
Yep.
And then the 17.
Right.
We don't have to.
It does look like that we will zero this year.
No, the increase.
The increase is 0. You're still putting away
Oh, I see,
25,000.
yeah, okay.
So that we don't have to do that because they've got that $31,000 somewhere.
So you're suggesting the 8,500 and the 1,700?
But
That's true.
this is the building fund though.
No, but they have that 31,000. They can use it for the build. They can do whatever they want
We
with
had
it.
to use it for education, though, education. purposes.
No, I don't think they do.
Computer lines.
I don't think they do.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna swear to that, but I think it's under the law
You can use it for
that was,
capital.
that was changed.
yeah.
Long-term.
It became a non-lapsing account. Prior to the change in the law, which was just about a year ago, they couldn't do that. They had to return that money to the town, and that's what the auditors said, but then the state changed the law and said, no, you can keep up to 2% of your budget that you haven't spent and put it in a non-lapsing account. And I think that money is somewhere.
It shall be made for educational purposes, and, authorized by local board of ed. And does not exceed 2% of the total budget appropriation for education. And that's the unexpended funds.
But now, if I may, here. This, again, the capital technology, Kellogg Capital Technology is supposed to be held by the town for future long-term technology improvements at Kellogg.
That's why I think it'd be hard to do, John, what you're
Right,
thinking.
and the other one is the
From that
Kellogg
point.
Capital Building Fund, held by the town for
I don't
long-term
think you
building
can take
improvements.
that money and put it towards that. It's.
Can we find out about that before we make a decision on that?
For state statute, you can't.
Right,
You can't use it towards the.
Well, do you have the statute?
Yeah.
So then fund the capital reserve and ask the board of ed to credit an additional 25,000.
Yeah, get you to the same place. If
Yeah.
they can cut their budget by 25,500, we can make the contribution.
Because they can use whatever that they have.
And they just
Right.
read from the legislation.
right.
Yeah.
It's here because
It's a
I
shell game, but
difficulty in doing
it doesn't matter as long as we don't overtax people.
It's just that
statutorily.
that's there. Yeah, I think you can't, we have to be kind of careful, but we could do
Right,
the shell game of saying reduce the budget. utilize.
Well, we'd be giving them the money for the things that even the technology
Yeah.
in the building. And they would be recognizing that they have $30,000 that they can use for educational purposes. They can use it for educational purposes and cut their budget accordingly. Is there,
That's all there is to it. I just have all my notes attached to it. It's one of those, one thing is emails are just between the.
and that's gets us to the same place.
Mhm.
Be fine with it.
Right, don't wanna touch these two lines.
Yeah, and if they can reduce their budget by not just 10, by 35,500, then we get to exactly the same place.
I have two questions. One, I just don't know the answer to this. That's why I'm asking. Who's the administrative assistant to the Board of Selectmen? The secretary or isn't one?
Yeah.
Okay, so, okay, so, and then secretary for the Board of Finance, you're reducing that, but isn't that based on the number of meetings we have? So what happens if our meetings go over?
Do like we do.
Either Dave or I take the minutes.
Yeah, I think we considered this last year and we all said no, or at least the majority said no.
What's that?
We didn't want to be in a situation where one of us would take.
Yeah, I just don't, I can't see, again, I thought it was based on the number of meetings we had. It was pretty locked tight, that's all. I just don't know, my question was who was the administrator? That litigation, John covered that one as far as my questions are concerned, and that one was one because it's based on the number of meetings, it's not based on a salary per se. And then there was another one. I think John covered I just put a check mark next to what you reduce. John covered the reserve. And the hydrant and water thing, I only had a question about that because I didn't know what they were. That's it. But I mean,
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I mean, I don't know, again. I don't know who the administrative, we don't have one, but I think cutting the 700 and some dollars. I like the meetings covered, I like somebody else doing it, I like getting the information, I like getting all that. So that's. I think it makes sense.
I think the logic behind that line item. For if we're successful in securing the steep grant, that David would need some help.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I just didn't know, because I didn't know there was one. I mean, that's.
That's
That I'm
why we
not
had-
questioning that, other than I just don't know, and I didn't know what the hydrants were either. So, but the board secretary, I think we did discuss this last time. And you covered the legal expenses. I'm on board with that, because we haven't used them, we haven't been sued, and. I don't think that we have to spend that money, but. But I still want to be able to go through this. I'm not comfortable just doing that now. I want to go through line by line, and
Okay.
have questions.
Thank you.
And some of those questions are gonna be tough questions and people are gonna get mad, and I'm just warning you up front, because there's probably gonna be people that do get angry about things, but we have to look at this as though we were doing our budget at home and we only have X number of dollars to work with.
What is
And this is Amy. I'm sorry to be late. I had the time wrong. What is the way I could get the documents? So should I pick them up from town hall? Is that the best thing? Okay,
I mean, I can send you what we're looking at right now.
I don't know if you get kicked off.
that's great. If you have it, that's great. Thank you, Ginger, very much.
Give me 1 minute and I'll get them up here.
So just so that next week is gonna be a satisfying experience. Questions, I want to make sure that the people who can answer the questions are here.
Yeah.
So what kind of questions?
I don't know yet. I honestly don't. I mean, I will let Ginger know, and then,
Okay,
but I really wanna take a look at it line by line and. See what, my thoughts and my questions are, because I do have some, and people are not gonna like some of my questions. I'm just telling you right up front.
Is Michelle gonna be present next week?
hopefully.
I don't know.
I'd like to ask her.
I think we need, Dave, can you check and see if she, I mean, we really do need to have her for some of this.
Do you think that we will still be able to stick to the timeline that we originally looked at tentatively? I mean, you got quite a bit done here this evening.
Yeah, if we reach the consensus, it's gonna take 4 people to figure out what the size of the cuts are. Next Monday, next Monday, that's a regular meeting.
Regular.
That's regular meeting.
We,
Let's
I
send it,
think
right?
should be on the schedule, right?
7 o'clock.
We needed to schedule a hearing. And then 2 weeks after that, the town vote.
Right.
So I don't know exactly, did we pick potential dates for
We
that?
hadn't done that yet, I don't
I
think.
think you were going to do that this evening.
There were some dates kicked around, but we didn't lock them in. We weren't sure.
I'd like to wait if we could and make that decision on Monday. That's my call. It's up to, with the rest of you guys decide, but that's just my opinion.
Maybe we should. I don't see that we're, look, if we don't get the work done next Monday, then we will have not accelerated, but adopted a schedule that we can't meet, so. I think if we get the work done next Monday, though, we should, next Monday's what's of May? 14th?
12?
12?
Well,
And so if we had a town hearing, say, I don't know, 5 days later,
No.
no, have to advertise it,
Between
yeah.
10 and 5.
Right.
10, okay, so at least 5 days later, not.
Yeah, advertise it 5 days before, not more than 10 days.
Okay, so if we had it, say, 6 days later, right, you could advertise it
I
next
don't have
day.
phone.
2 days. You make the motion tonight.
No,
we-
no, we're not gonna make the
No,
motion
no, no.
tonight.
You would make the motion say Monday.
Yeah,
It would, you'd
So-
order the public hearing announcement on Tuesday. It'd be in Wednesday's paper.
That day.
okay.
So it's 2
1,
weeks.
2, oh, you have to,
It's gonna be 5 days
We'll
from
be in
there.
June.
I thought the 2 weeks was between the hearing and the town meeting.
It is.
It's
So if you
correct.
go, it's gotta be 5 days after the first announcement. So let's say you get in the 14th, 4, 5, that would be the 19th. Then 2 weeks from that could be the town. Yeah, you could do
Yeah,
it.
right.
You
at
can
the
do
end
it.
of the month.
Right at
It'd
the
be
end.
close.
We could have the town meeting right
Real
on the
close.
1st of June.
But I think.
Well, where does the holiday?
no,
I
second.
know.
Where does the holiday fall?
Holiday is the
Yeah.
26th.
Okay, so that's the week earlier.
Yes.
But I think even Rebecca told us, was it Rebecca or somebody else in town hall said it's not gonna change their life much at all.
It
to
doesn't.
Get the bills out a couple weeks later.
No,
So it'll be another week, we take
take
another.
another week.
I just had a question. If we make the decision on the 12th, it won't get in the paper until the 22nd.
14th. Oh, do you still use, who do you use now?
Still use Waterbury.
So they don't have a local
circulation?
section, they don't have a circulation, do they?
They still have
Yeah.
circulation through town and they're still, we still.
Okay, well, if it's a daily, then I guess it's fine. Sorry.
They're pushing very hard just to have it online. There's a bill right now in the House, I believe, in the Senate.
They should have a place where you could post it online. I think that would, because more people do that, but we can also do that. Yes, no? Post it online?
We will anyhow.
It has to be in the paper. I realize that, but we can post it online too. Yeah,
You know.
it just has to be in one specific spot.
What's working out statute now? That it would just have to be online.
So while we've got you guys here, the Board of Selectmen, you heard suggestions that John made. You have concerns about it? Or you need more time to look at it?
I don't think, I'm going to speak, and I hope I'm speak for both of you. Please stop me if I don't. I think this now falls under your purview. We gave you our proposed spending plan. And now, under the statutes, it falls to you. I just ask you to remember, bear in mind. 12-1, I think it's 12-122. Okay, when you're putting together all this and you look at statutes all having to do with what a Board of Finance does. So I think you're well within that, Steve. Okay.
I just wondered.
I still,
I would like to add that, this is a great experience, because, there's 7 other people besides just the 3 of us when we meet. And, the only thing I would like to see the board maybe, look at the non-recurring capital balance. That's a big number. That's $216,500. That to do in just this year, or in this fiscal year. Proposal spend. I think that the paradigm has to change under this. 10.8, that. We're not going to be able to, save enough money to buy a fire truck.
Mhm.
Fire truck.
Depending what you're gonna,
But unfortunately, I'm looking at the chair here and this is the discussion for now, looking at capital plans.
So,
But we can't go there yet.
what were you gonna say? My thought,
Go ahead.
my thought is,
Apologize.
rather than trying to save, uh. In all these lines is big. Maybe what we need to do is figure out what the. Interest would be on any one of these items and just
as a note.
put that out, save that.
Well, we wouldn't know what that is until, you have to do it, but I think it's, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. If we have to, if it gets to the point where we have a problem, rather than tax the, heck out of everybody now to put these in the reserves, don't put as much money in the reserve. And then if we get into that situation, then we investigate that, but we're not there yet. So maybe that's the way to look at this and say, we're not kicking the can down the road. But I think that, that's a very good idea and it's something that I had thought of myself. Not looking to go out and borrow more money, but, if we don't have to do this now, let's say we don't need a vehicle for another 4 years. Well, we've been putting all this money away. 4 years from now, maybe it will behoove us to be able to borrow half of the money to buy whatever that vehicle is and then tap into this. So I kind of agree with that, Chris. I hate to say it, but I do.
But absolutely, this is why we're looking at
Yeah,
the capital plan in the future, but
Each of these are gonna do for us and what are,
right.
we are working, and I think we've all talked about this, we're working without any plan. We have no future plan of what is
right.
gonna
And I
happen
think, yeah,
with our, and the non-recurring, and I think that's a very valiant point because we don't know where we're gonna go. And we also know that there are things that are sitting on the edge that we don't have an answer to. We don't know what's happening with the steep grant. We
Right.
don't know what other grants might be available that could come up if the steep doesn't go through.
and
What
we
other
have to keep
options?
pursuing this too, but I
Yes,
think
it's-
that to have money sitting there that we don't necessarily, might not use for the next 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
With the possibility of borrowing it, I hate to borrow money, everybody hates to borrow money, but maybe that
We
would.
also know how much did we need? It was about 20%. We need a certain percentage, like for a steep to invest. So maybe following your train of thought, Chris is saying that's how much money needs to at least be maintained in the reserve.
Mhm.
That if we had to put a match up.
Right,
Yeah, so my point to Chris was that if you're probably not likely to buy a $1 to $2 million fire truck with like 99.9% on loan, right, or on to borrow, you're gonna have to put some sort of down payment on. And is that number gonna be big enough here to do that? So it's not just about, we never expect that that line item is gonna cover a $2 million fire truck or $500,000, but you need a minimum to get the order started with a 2-year wait to get that truck built. So
right, but you also don't know,
I
I'm gonna
agree
put
with
that
you.
order in 5 years from now, or 4
Understood.
years from now, or whatever, and we're putting this money away.
I agree,
I agree with that.
but you have to something, right?
And it's same thing with roads and bridges and every other line item that's in there is, we don't know.
Really?
A lot of it we could
Is that
figure
the
out
way it
and
could
we
be?
could probably pare
Okay,
your contribution down to maybe just a hair over the minimum. And not give up on it. Obviously, we're not gonna give up on these, but it's not sustainable the way it is. I mean, we can't carry all of these
right.
and be able to think that in 10 years, we're gonna be able to afford any of them, because we're not.
Well,
I have another question as far as the reserve accounts is concerned. Where is this money sitting right now? Is this money getting the most bang for its buck, as far as interest rates and return? Is it, what kind of account is it sitting in? Are we making any money? Are we investing, this money
yeah,
in any accounts? I don't know. I'm just,
I think it is. I mean, that's been presented to us, but I don't.
I don't know. I don't remember the answer.
It's changed down in Washington.
No.
You
I'm not-
can,
Let's not go there today.
you can, as I
Well,
recall.
I'm talking
I know
about,
there's interest.
that's what I don't know.
No,
I would like to know where this money is.
I don't know what the interest is right now, but there's not a great amount.
Yes, but then he didn't, I don't think he finished.
It's some of
Yeah,
these
that's
items
fine.
that you look at,
Yeah.
non-recurring capital funds, so when you look at, we're looking at some of the big ticket items, but when you look at the 107, 108 maintenance reserve, that's one of those that we should never get rid of. That should always remain because, again, it's maintenance that we need to build up the painting fund, same thing. Okay, we've been able to go into those funds. We were able to go into the painting reserve a couple of years ago and paint the town hall. Pay for it completely out of that fund. So again, there are some things that you are not going to want to touch there that you want to leave there, and there are going to be some things that obviously the bigger ticket items you would look at, as you have referred to them, you know, it being some down payment, so on and so forth. But again, this circles back around to the development of a capital plan.
Yeah, I mean, we've got about $1 million, a little less in our non-recurring capital accounts. And if you can't, these are just rough approximations, but if you can only finance 80%, then if we have $5 million of expenditures with our own equity and with debt, that's all we have. So these things are inadequate. They'll probably always be inadequate, and we have to bank on a fair amount of debt financing in the future.
Mhm.
Now, with the risk of keeping people here 5 more minutes, I think this is apropos. There's been some sentiment that was expressed at the last meeting that we've got the capital reserves, they're about $1 million. We've got the general fund. It's looking like it's gonna be about $800,000 when the smoke clears here. So we've got 1.8 million sitting around, and is it interchangeable? So I said I was gonna check with the conference on municipalities, but I checked the statute first. And it's, if you want to look at it, it's chapter 108 of the statutes. And it says that the following four things, none of the following four things can be done, none, without our recommendation and a majority approval by the town. That's setting up and funding the reserve for the specific purpose the statute allows. If you want to appropriate money out of the reserve, same thing, go to the town, get the vote. If the project turns out to be more than the appropriation can handle, you can only abort. I don't know how this would work out in practice, but you can only abort the project if the impossibility of completing it was unforeseen at the time of the appropriation. So all sorts of safeguards are built in. And then finally, if you terminate a reserve, you have to use the funds to pay down bonded debt.
Right.
You cannot replenish the general fund. I looked at the statute. My sense was of the protections built around reserves, I would not have been comfortable even believing that without the need to spend the reserve monies to pay down debt, I would not have been comfortable believing that you can use the reserves to replenish the general fund. That was the view of the Conference on Municipalities as well. He said, I'm not a lawyer. That's my read. And he said, if he's going to check with his network, and if you got any different indication to get back to me. He's not gotten back to me, but remember, our bonded debt is well over our reserve. So those are not interchangeable.
Mhm.
We've got 801 and we've got the reserves to use for the specific purposes that they were set up for. And to cut to the chase, we can't forego tax increases and use the general fund to meet our overspending, comfortable in the belief that we can just fill up the general fund in the future. Can't do it.
Right, yeah.
That sounds about right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Public comments.
Otherwise, I'm gonna go to public comment. Public comment,
So no motion thing at all.
no motion made at all.
I have a public comment. Two. On the Board of Finance Secretary, I do think we can probably lower that by 400 and be safe that all meetings are covered. The 2,200 was because for a couple of years, we had 1 million special meetings and public hearings, either Frontier and Solar. But we've had 16 scheduled meetings so far, 2 were canceled. July is always up in the air. And I think you'll probably have 5 more from India, so 22. Yeah, and you can keep in mind, they get paid to type the minutes and give them to the town clerk per meeting. That's it. That's what I get paid for. So you guys do whatever you want with that. but I need to clarify a comment made. No number has ever been presented to this Board of Finance that was calculated based on anything but the treasurer's numbers. The May 2024 meeting, the general fund projection was 897,000. The August general fund projection from the treasurer was 977. The June 1st was 900,000. They're all in the minutes and they're all in your drive. Not once has the secretary of the Board of Finance calculated the general fund projection for this board.
So this paper came from Michelle?
Every number
Did
on,
this paper come from Michelle?
Tom, let me finish.
You're not cross-examining her.
Every number on here is from the treasurer's reports. That's what those notes are.
And I've had time to validate those numbers. I've checked them all.
They're right, they're all in everything that you have.
I got this at the beginning of this meeting and I haven't validated the numbers.
Well, go ahead and validate
My
it.
point is that I don't like to accept stuff outside the treasurer.
We're not accepting anything. We didn't make a motion to accept
I'm
anything.
not gonna get to the formalities of accepting and.
Well, you are, because you're starting that conversation. We're
I'm using the
accepting it.
word differently than you are.
All my
Well,
point
Words
is,
matter.
you are, it is incorrect to say the secretary calculated any numbers whatsoever. Those numbers are just put in a format that comes up with a mill rate and a general fund balance based on the treasurer's numbers only.
And we did this because the treasurer is not doing it. She's not getting us all the information we need when we need it. So we did this so we wouldn't be flying blind.
Any other public comment?
I would
Not that I
take,
can say out loud.
I would just take issue with that a little bit, but you know, when we look at documents, and this is the way I've always looked at documents, and again, I'm not splitting hairs here, but documents that come in should be documents from the town employees, so on and so forth. And we can argue about the numbers and we can argue about where they came from and we can argue about the formats to put in, so on and so forth. But I always look at, and again, not shooting any secretaries in the foot, okay? I'm not, but the secretary's job has always been to take the minutes, and that was it. That has been what I've seen in the past. Okay, I appreciate the work that's been done, but
So she's not allowed to make public comment.
no.
She introduces herself and says,
Carol, you're going, she's more than allowed to make any type of public comment. Okay, but for work products, my question always is, you know, that didn't come from the treasurer. The numbers did, I'm not arguing that, but should a secretary be doing work products at that?
but he
The
said it came
secretary
from the
is not
board,
doing that.
board of finance
The
member.
secretary is not doing
I
that.
submitted
He
that.
submitted it.
Okay.
He's a board of finance.
And I
member.
asked the,
Okay,
the
that's
chair,
fine,
wait a
John.
minute, so
Yeah.
people are throwing stuff around. Let's make it clear. We can introduce anything we want. It doesn't have to be prepared by a town employee. I can introduce anything I want with the permission of the chair, which is what I did.
Okay, I'll fly with that.
We're trying to help.
I make a motion, we adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
Steve, few seconds.
Now, when Amy piped in,
What is that?
did we technically have to? I don't know. That's just,
Well,
Curious.
you didn't, well,
no, we're not picking on you. Don't worry, Amy. We're just trying to get
Okay.
some clarification.
I understand.